My name is Lin Xiaoyang. I am a very ordinary high school student. I can probably not even get enough water when I throw it into the crowd. As for the success, I won't be able to get into the Qing dynasty in Peking University, but I won't be able to criticize the teacher for his name. Even more importantly, the face in the lens is said to be pretty and beautiful, but the one who is hard to hear is passerby. In short, I am one of the thousands of high school students in this small town in the south, nothing special. But if you really want to say that there is something different, maybe there are some little secrets hidden in my heart. It's not a big deal that surprises the world, but some small thoughts about youth, such as a preference for someone or a confusion about the future. It was the early 2010s, and smartphones just became popular. We didn't keep up with the trend in this small place. Most people still use the buttons and press the buttons for a long time when sending text messages. The days in the campus are simple like a white paper. Every day, they go to classes, write and play. When they occasionally glance at the person they like, they can enjoy the flowers in their hearts. Our school is the oldest high school in the small town. The teaching building was built in the last century. The walls are a little scattered and there is always a smoldering smell in the corridors. There are several old banyan trees on the side of the playground, and the tree is the place we love most when we are in class. There is a small river outside the door behind the school, and the bicycle paths on the river are a must-see for many people after school. I like that road very much. In the evening, the sunset will dye the river's surface golden, and the wind blows over it, bringing a little moisture, which is particularly comfortable. That day was a very ordinary Monday, and I remember it very clearly because it was the first time I saw Su Qing. It's quite coincidental to say that our school holds a campus cultural festival every year, such as cultural performances, social displays, and flea markets, which are as popular as the New Year. I usually have no interest in these activities and feel bored, but that year I was forced to help set up the venue by the class manager, which was called training ability. What ability can I have? But I just move tables, roll colorful belts, and do some hard work. Just as I was sweating profusely, I saw a girl standing by the dance platform, holding a bill in her hand, tidying up carefully. The sunlight leaked from the leaves of the banyan tree and fell on her, as if she had given her a layer of light. I didn't know why, but I was stunned at that time, and the thing in my hand almost fell to the ground. She raised her head and smiled, saying, "Student, can you help me? These pieces have to be sent to each class, and I can't get any of them." My brain was hot, and I was busy, and my mouth was tangled. Okay, there's no problem. Actually, I didn't hear what she said, but I just thought she looked so good when she smiled, with her eyes swaying, like a crescent moon. Later I found out that her name was Su Qing, and she was from the next class. She was usually quite low-key, but she was very good at looking at her. She couldn't help but look at her twice when she saw her. That day I distributed a bill with her and went all over the campus. To be honest, it's quite tiring, but I can't tell you. Su Qing didn't talk much, but every time he opened his mouth, he was very gentle. He would patiently hear that I was talking nonsense and laughed out loud. I remember one time when I said something wrong and called cultural festival a cultural disaster. She was stunned for a moment, then burst into laughter and said, "Lin Xiaoyang, you are really interesting." Yes, she remembered my name at that time. I feel so beautiful that I feel that this day is so simple. After we finished delivering the order, we sat on the bench next to the playground for a while. She took out a bottle of mineral water from her bag and sent it to me, saying, "Thank you for your hard work." I took the water, my palms were sweating, and my mouth was calm. It's nothing, it's all small things. After that day, I began to pay attention to Su Qing intentionally and unintentionally. It's either that kind of deliberately following or something, or they will look at her in the crowd for a few more times, or they will lift their ears when they hear someone mention her name. She seems to have a special temperament, not that very beautiful beauty, but it just makes people unable to see it. Every time I see her reading a book by the classroom window or chatting with her classmates at the exercises, I feel like I'm not able to tell, as if I'm being gently swept. But I am a person who is so young that I can only think about it in my heart, and I dare not do anything if I like someone. But my dead party, Zhang Haoran, had long seen that I was a little unfavorable. He has the kind of fearless character, and he doesn't have a door on his mouth, so he often uses it to open it with me. Once when he was in school, he insisted on taking me to the small sales office at the entrance of the school to buy snacks. He poked me with his elbow while walking, and said frankly, "Yang, why have you been absent-minded recently? Have you fallen in love with whom? Is it true that Su Qing, the next class?" I was so red from his face that he said, and he quickly rejected it, "Don't talk nonsense, nothing is wrong." But this guy didn't believe it, and smiled like a fool. "Come on, you have to write your face for all your little thoughts. If you like it, you will chase it. What's the slightest way? If you don't act, you might be taken away by someone else." He said this to me, but he still said hard, "If I said nothing, there would be nothing. Please don't care about things." Zhang Haoran said with a shoulder expression, then bit a lollipop and continued to tell me about it. Speaking of which, although Zhang Haoran is not a polite person, others are actually quite dependent. We have known each other since junior high school and have sex with each other, so we are considered brothers. His family conditions are better than mine, and his clothes are fashionable than mine, but he never disliked me and always said that I am a content. I don't know how he saw it, but I don't think so. After a few days, the cultural festival officially began. The campus was so popular that day that it was full of seats and performances everywhere, and even the most serious teachers were always smiling and mingling with the students. Zhang Haoran and I walked around, ate a few skewers and bought some gadgets, and had a lot of fun. Later, we passed by the dance area and happened to see a class performing a play, where Su Qing was playing a very important role. She was wearing a white dress and her hair was simply tilted into a horse's tail. When she stood on the stage and spoke the lyrics, her voice was as crisp as the spring water in the mountains. I stood in the crowd, my eyes staring at her, my heart beating very fast. Zhang Haoran muttered in a low voice, "Look, I just said you like her, your eyes were almost stuck." I ignored him and continued to look at the stage. Until the performance was over, Su Qing smiled at the audience when she was off, and I suddenly came back to my senses. That smile is really beautiful. A thought suddenly appeared in my heart, it would be great if I could say a few more words to her, even if it was just a chat. But when this idea came out, I pinched myself. How can I have the qualifications to talk to her like me? She was so dazzling, and I stood beside her and thought it was like a background board. But it's really amazing to do this, sometimes it's really amazing. Just when I was thinking about it, there was a ring in the event arrangement for the cultural festival, which allowed students to register for a campus treasure. To put it bluntly, there are some small prizes hidden in the entire school. Even if you find someone, you can still add extra points. Zhang Haoran heard that he had a degree and was defeated by the Lenin, so he insisted on asking me to register. I didn't want to go, but I couldn't help but grind him, so I had to agree. After the report, the staff were randomly assigned, and Su Qing and I were actually assigned to each other. I was confused at that time and thought to myself that this was a coincidence, right? Su Qing was quite natural. She smiled at me and said, "Yeah, it's you again, we're so crazy." Her words made my ears red, so I could only point them in awkwardly, saying, yes, that's quite a coincidence." After the game started, we took a picture of a hidden treasure and started looking for a search at the campus. To be honest, the picture was quite rough and the lines were quite blurry, but the feeling of finding something with Su Qing was really special. We first went to the small garden behind the library, and after rummaging through the grass for a long time, we couldn't find anything, but we were full of mud. Su Qing looked at my wolf-like appearance and couldn't help laughing, saying, "Why are you clumsy? Come on, I'll help you." She took out a paper towel from her bag and gently wiped the mud on her hands. At that moment, my heart beat like a drum beat, and my words were incomplete. Thank you. She didn't care and said with a smile, "It's okay, let's continue looking for it, maybe there will be harvest in the next place." I clicked and followed her, and my brain was in a group, which was what she had just laughed at. Later, we ran to several more places and finally found a small box under an old banyan tree near the playground with a bonus. Su Qing was as happy as a child, and she held a bonus and said to me, "Lo, we found it. We can change the prizes." Looking at her excited look, I also bloomed with the joy in my heart, and I felt that this day was as simple as a dream. After the game ended, we took the prize coupon to change the prize and changed to a small notebook with the cover of blue, which looked pretty. Su Qing said, "I'll give you this one, leave a remark." I took the notebook, my palms were warm, and I didn't know what to say on my mouth, so I could only say in a low voice, "Thank you." That night, I got home, lying on the bed and turned around and couldn't sleep. My brain was full of Su Qing's shadow. Her smile, her voice, and even her actions when she helped me to clean the mud were replayed in my brain like a movie screen. I took the blue pencil, opened the first page, hesitated for a long time, and finally wrote a line of words. "I found Baozan with Su Qing today, which is really fun." I know, this kind of mood is probably like it. Although I dare not say it, I have already begun to have a little expectation in my heart. Maybe there will be more such days in the future. A few days later, the school resumed its usual rhythm, taking classes, exams, and working, and life was like flowing. But it seems that there was a little bit of unexplained connection between me and Su Qing because of the game that day. Although we still don't have any special intersections, I always meet her in the corridor or in the playground. Every time she will smile at me, click on the head, and sometimes I will chat with 2 simple sentences. Once, when I was a school student, I rode by the river and saw Su Qing standing alone by the river, holding a book in her hand, looking down at something. Xiang pulled her shadow very long, and the wind blew over. Her hair was light and beautiful. The picture was as beautiful as a painting. I hesitated for a moment, and still plucked up the courage to ride over, and pretended to be unintentionally, "Su Qing, are you going home like this?" She raised her head and saw me, smiled, and said, "Yes, I usually walk here, the scenery is pretty good." "Where is you?" I slammed and said, "I'm about the same, this road is close." Actually, my family is not in a smooth road, but I just want to say a few more words to her, even such uninvested conversations. We walked around and talked about small things, such as what happened to our recent exams, and whether the food in the school cafeteria was delicious. But I felt particularly satisfied in my heart, and I felt that being able to walk along this small road along the river with her was simply the kindness God gave me. After that day, I began to look forward to the moment of schooling more and more, and I always hoped to meet her in the river, even if it was just a few words. And every time I see her, the little flame in my heart burns even more vigorously. Although I still haven't confessed my love, at least, I first realized that it is also a kind of happiness to like someone. As the days pass by, the banyan leaves in the campus begin to turn yellow, and autumn comes quietly. Although my relationship with Su Qing has not made much progress, I am at least no longer a complete stranger. Every time I see her, I feel a warm feeling that cannot be described in my heart, like a cup of hot tea in autumn, warm and sweet. What I don't know is that in this period of Qingyan's time, there are more stories waiting for me to experience. Those sweetness and regrets of the future, those unspoken words, are all like the sunset on the river, waiting quietly for me to discover. The autumn wind is getting hurried and the old banyan leaves in the campus fall down one by one, rustling under the feet. My life is still the same. I go to classes and write every day. I occasionally go to the small sales office to buy a bottle of soda and brag and spank. But there's always a small corner in my heart that leaves Su Qing. Every time I pass by her in the corridor or meet her on the small road on the river during school, I can't help but look at her twice. Even if she just smiles casually, I can have fun for half a day. It was Friday. After school, I rode my bicycle as usual and slowly walked towards the small road along the river. I had no hope of meeting Su Qing, but after all, she didn't walk this path every day. But as soon as I reached the river, I saw a familiar figure standing there, holding a book in my hand, and my hair was a little irritated by the wind. My heart thumped, and Lima pinched the car, put it on and shouted indifferently, "Su Qing, it's you again." She turned over and saw that it was me. Her eyes slid, and she smiled and said, "Yang, why do you always meet me? Did you come by deliberately?" She said this so hot that my face was hot, and she hurriedly said, no way, my home is just a coincidence. In fact, I knew very well that this road could not smooth my direction, but how could I dare to admit it? Su Qing didn't ask anymore, but just pointed at the hen and said, "Let's go together, it's a smooth road anyway." I heard that my heart was so beautiful that I answered quickly, and pushed my bicycle to follow her, walking slowly. The sun shines the river with golden scents, and the wind blows over and brings a sense of slightness, but the heart is warm. We talked about some topics that were not very nutritious, such as how difficult the recent math exam was, and what kind of weird work the teacher assigned. When she spoke, she always spoke in detail, and occasionally she would laugh out loud, and the sound made my heart feel relieved. Halfway through, she suddenly stopped, pointed to a crooked tree on the river and said, "Xian, look at that tree, is it very strange? Does it look like a person waving?" I looked in the direction she pointed, and the tree was indeed quite crooked, and the branches stretched out like an arm. I was so happy and said, "It's really a bit like that. Maybe it's a tree spirit. I'm waiting to pull people down to become the wife of the village." She was amused by me and covered her mouth and said, "How come you can talk nonsense? What kind of tree spirit is there?" We stood there, smiling, and time seemed to slow down. At that moment, I suddenly realized that I might be like this, even if I didn't say anything amazing. I just chatted and looked at the scenery, and a flower could bloom in my heart. Later, we continued to walk forward, and as we chatted, we arrived at the intersection near her small area. She stopped and turned to me and said, "Sunday, I'm here. Thank you for accompanying me for this period." I slapped my head and said, "It's nothing, a trivial matter." But I felt a little disappointed in my heart, thinking that this section of the road was so short. She snatched her hand at me and said, "I'll see you tomorrow." Then she turned around and walked into the small area. I watched her back disappear at the entrance of the building before riding on the car. On the way, my brain was full of just known scenes, especially the way she looked like her eyes were swaying when she smiled, as if she had been engraved into my brain. That night, I opened the blue notebook again and wrote on it, "Today I walked the small road along the river with Su Qing, and she looked so beautiful when she smiled." As the days pass by, the relationship between Su Qing seems to be closer than before, but it is not as close as it is. At most, I occasionally chat with a few sentences when I encounter it at school, or walk together after school. I was still very young and I never dared to say these two words. I always felt that I was separated from her and couldn't see the wall. However, Zhang Haoren, a guy, didn't plan to let me continue to procrastinate. One day when he was school, he took me to the small sales office to buy snacks. He poked me with his elbow while walking, and said with a slight silence, "Jiang, I see you have been very close to Su Qing recently. Have you made any progress? Have you confessed?" When I heard this, my face was red and I said with no pleasure, "You should be careful of things, so there is no progress, just an ordinary student." As soon as he heard this, Lima rolled his eyes. "Come on, can ordinary classmates always walk together? Can you watch someone stay alone for half an hour? I tell you, if you like it, you have to take the initiative, otherwise you will have no place to cry when you cry." I was so nervous that he said, but he still said, "Who said I like her? Don't guess." Zhang Haoren said with a shoulder, biting a lollipop, and said, Okay, you don't like it, then I heard that Zhou has been wandering around Su Qing recently. Don't blame me for not reminding you." When I heard the name Zhou, my heart skipped a beat. Zhou is a win figure in our school. He is well-developed, well-made, and plays basketball smoothly. He is simply the white horse prince in the eyes of girls. I heard that his family conditions are not bad. He wears all the brands of goods, and he is surrounded by a group of people wherever he goes. Compared to him, I was simply a small stone on the road and couldn't even touch it. Not to mention, I had heard rumors before, saying that Zhou was interested in Su Qing and often looked for opportunities to chat with her. I didn't say anything, but my heart felt like I was blocked by something, which made me feel particularly uncomfortable. That night, I was lying on the bed and turned around and couldn't sleep. All my heart was full of Zhang Haoren's words. When Su Qing was really chased by Zhou, what should I do? But when I asked me to confess, I felt that I didn't have that qualification. The feeling of this tangle is just about to force me into trouble. When I was in school the next day, I paid special attention. Sure enough, I saw Zhou Chen and Su Qing standing together at the playground. The two seemed to be talking about something. Zhou Chen smiled so hard that he was holding a bottle of drinks in his hand and handed them to Su Qing. Although Su Qing didn't answer, she didn't refuse, but just smiled and slammed her head. I stood far away and watched, my heart so sore that I felt like I was drinking jealous, and my fists were clenched. While eating at noon, I couldn't help but complain to Zhang Haoren, "Why do you think Zhou Chen's guy is always watching Su Qing? It's so terrifying." Zhang Haoren gnawed his chicken legs and looked at me squintly. "The sour taste has gone." I said, "What's the use of being rude? If you have the ability, go and chat with others. You can't let Zhou Chen dominate it alone." I was so speechless that I could only sniff the food on my head, and I started to feel a little moved in my heart. Maybe I really should do something. In the next few days, I began to try to find opportunities to contact Su Qing more. For example, when I was studying, I deliberately waited for her on the small road along the river, or meted her at the entrance of the classroom, and I hadn't talked about some of them. Su Qing is still quite friendly to me and responds with a smile every time, but I also feel that she is like this to everyone, as gentle as the wind of spring, and she can't tell the difference between the pressure and the pressure. This feeling made me even more confused, and I always felt like I was doing a dream that was destined to be unsuccessful. But the more I was like this, the more I couldn't let it go. Not only did the small flame in my heart not feel weak, but it was burning even more vigorously. It was not until one time when the school organized an autumn tour that I truly realized that loving someone sometimes really makes people particularly brave. That autumn trip was to a mountain park outside the suburbs of a small town. It was said that it was to relax everyone. In fact, it was to climb mountains and have a picnic. I took a few photos as a souvenir. Our class and Su Qing and his class were in the same group, and they took the bus early in the morning. On the car, Zhang Haoren insisted on sitting with me, and kept talking. "Yang, today is a good opportunity. The scenery on the mountain is good and the atmosphere is good. I might be able to be romantic or something." I glared at him without any worries. "Stop talking nonsense, I just go climbing the mountain, I have no other thoughts." He smiled and said in a low voice, "Okay, you are stubborn, don't regret it later." When we arrived at the park, we first followed the teacher to climb a mountain road, and we were so tired that we were panting. Su Qing was wearing a simple sports outfit and walked far away in front of me. She occasionally turned around and laughed at her classmates. The sunlight leaked from the leaves and fell on her, making her look so bright. I looked at her back and felt a throbbing in my heart that I couldn't describe, and I felt that the picture was as beautiful as the lens in the movie. After climbing halfway up the mountain, everyone stopped to rest and started to organize a picnic. I and Zhang Haoren, Su Qing and several girls, but they were far away. Zhang Haoren and his fellow shouted deliberately, "Su Qing, what delicious food is there in your set? Give us some points." Su Qing heard it and smiled and said, "Yes, come and take it." I was pushed over by Zhang Haoren and took a few sandwiches. I was so embarrassed that I didn't know where to put it. Seeing me like this, Su Qing couldn't help laughing and said, "Yeah, why are you so shy? It's okay, we are all classmates, don't be restricted." She said this to make my face even more red, so she could only lower her head and whisper, and ran back with something. Zhang Haoren laughed a little and said, "When will you catch up with someone in this way?" I ignored him and made up my mind secretly. No matter how you have to find an opportunity today, I will say a few more words to her. After eating, everyone started to play freely, some went to take photos, and some continued to climb to the top of the mountain. I saw Su Qing standing next to a large stone, looking down at the scenery away. Her hair was blown lightly by the wind. I plucked up my courage and walked over, and put it on my face and said unintentionally, "Su Qing, this scenery is really good. Do you also like to see the scenery?" She turned over and saw it was me, and smiled and said, "Yes, from here you can see the whole town, which is very beautiful. Look, are we school there?" I looked in the direction she pointed, and I could definitely see the silhouette of the school, and I felt warm in my heart, saying, "It's true, I didn't expect that I could see so far when I climbed so high." We stood there, talking about the small town and the interesting stories of the school, and the time was very fast. Later, she suddenly said, "Yang, you don't talk much, but chatting with you is quite interesting. You can always say something that makes people laugh." I was happy when I heard it, and I calmly said, "Is that right?" I just said casually, "There is nothing special." She smiled and slapped, saying, "It's not casually, you are quite honest and makes people feel comfortable." This sentence is like a small stone, smashing into my heart and stirring up circles of ripples. I suddenly realized that loving her seemed to be no longer out of reach. Maybe I really should have tried to take that step. But at this moment, Zhang Haoran's loud voice came from afar, "Yang Yang, Su Qing, the teacher is calling for a gathering, come down quickly." I felt regretful in my heart, so I had to walk back with Su Qing, but my heart was as sweet as if I had eaten honey. After the autumn trip, it seemed that my relationship with Su Qing was getting closer. Although we are still not able to confess our love, at least, there is an unspeakable tacit understanding between us. It has become common to walk the small roads along the river together when you are out of school. I occasionally talk about my thoughts, such as being confused about the future or the pressure on the college entrance examination. I found that although Su Qing looked gentle, she was actually quite rude. She said that her father and mother were busy with work and were often not at home, so she had learned to take care of herself. After hearing this, I felt a little more distressed about her, and I felt that she was so open on the surface, and there was a lot of pressure hidden behind her. I started thinking that it would be great if I could do anything for her, even if I just talked to her and listened to her complaints. But what I didn't expect was that such days would not continue, and life would always give you a serious blow when you were the least guarded. It was an ordinary Monday. I went to school as usual. I heard that my classmates were discussing and saying that something happened at Su Qing's house. No one clearly explained what it was. I only knew that she had asked for a while to go to school these days. My heart was nervous and Lima found Zhang Haoran and asked about the situation. He also slammed his head and said, "I don't know either. It seems that it's her father's problem. It's quite serious. No one knows what's going on." In the next few days, Su Qing never came to school, and she could no longer be seen in the corridors, on the playgrounds, and on the river roads. My heart was empty, as if something important had been lost. Every day after school, I would still walk to the small road on the river, standing next to the crooked tree, waiting for her to appear, but every time I was disappointed. I began to realize that loving someone is not only heartwarming and sweet, but sometimes I feel worried and powerless. I don't know what happened to her or what she could do, so I could only wait silently, hoping that she could come back soon, and hope that everything could go back to the past. What I didn't expect was that this waiting would be longer and more heartbreaking than I thought. Time flies, and it turns winter. The banyan trees in the campus are waving. When the wind blows, it makes the bones so cold that they are diamonding. I still go to the small road next to the river every day, standing next to the crooked tree waiting for Su Qing, but every time it is the empty river surface and the cold wind. Her seat was empty for a few weeks, and the opinions of her classmates in the class became smaller. It seemed that everyone was accustomed to her absence. Only the vacancy in my heart was getting bigger and bigger, like a hole that could not be filled. Seeing my insane appearance, Zhang Haoran couldn't help but start muttering again, "Yang Yang, don't always be like this dying. You can't help Su Qing's business, so you can't always waste it." I lowered my head and kicked the little pebbles on the road, saying, "I know, but I just can't let it go. I always think she will come back." He sighed and patted my shoulder, "Okay, you are just stubborn, right? But I heard that her family affairs seem to be quite numb. I guess I can't come back in a short time, so don't have too much hope." This was like a basin of cold water, which made my heart feel refreshed. I knew Zhang Haoran had good intentions, but hearing the words "I can't come back in a short time" still made my chest feel panicked. That night, I went home, flipped through the blue notebook, staring at the words I wrote before. My brain was full of Su Qing's shadow. Finally, I wrote a sentence, "It's so cold in winter, Su Qing, where are you?" As the days pass by, Su Qing still never comes back. Later, I heard from my classmates that her family had moved to another place due to some changes. No one knew where she went, and even she had completed her transfer. When I heard the news, I held the pen in my hand and had not returned to my mind for a long time. Moved away? That's all? Isn't it even said again? I began to regretting why I didn't have the courage to tell her clearly. Even if I was rejected, at least I wouldn't feel regretful like I am now, and I don't have the chance to say goodbye. Seeing me like this, Zhang Haoran tried to comfort me. "Lo, you can't ask for something. If you like it, you'll be fine. Don't be too complicated." I was reluctant to be a little bit strong, but my heart seemed to be empty, so empty that I didn't want to say anything. The days of high school have to continue, and the campus without Su Qing seems to be suddenly in a mess. Every day when I take classes, take exams, and write, I mechanically repeat these things. I always think of her in my brain, my smile on the small road on the river, and my back when I stood on the top of the mountain and watched the scenery during autumn. Those scenes are like clips of old movies, which are repeatedly played in my brain, and they can't be deleted no matter how hard they are. In a flash, the college entrance examination came and left. I was reluctant to get into a university in another place and left this small town. Before leaving, I walked to the riverside path for the last time, stood under the crooked tree, and watched the river surface dazed. The wind is still so cool, and the sun is still so beautiful, but there is no familiar figure anymore. I muttered in a low voice, "Su Qing, see you again." Then I turned around and knew in my heart that there might be something that I couldn't even let go of. Life in college is busier than I thought. New environments, new friends, and new challenges have made me less time to think about the past. Smartphones are becoming more and more popular, and everyone is starting to use WeChat and QQ, and social media has become a daily routine. I occasionally browse my circle of friends to see the old classmates' movements, but I have never seen the shadow of Su Qing. She seemed to have disappeared from my world, leaving no trace left. In my sophomore year, I joined several roommates in a social event, saying that I was going to a remote mountainous area to teach and help local children to take classes. I was not very interested at first, but I couldn't resist the enthusiasm of my roommates, so I went with me. That mountainous area is not far away from our small town, and it takes a few hours to take a car. The scenery is beautiful, but the conditions are really bitter, and the internet is constantly ongoing. The days of teaching are quite fulfilling. I give my children classes and play with them every day. Although I am tired, I feel a sense of satisfaction that I can't describe. One evening, I was playing around the small river at the entrance of the village with a few children. I saw a figure standing on the other side of the river, looking down at something. Xiang pulled her shadow very long, and her hair was blown lightly by the wind. At that moment, my heart beat and slapped it. Why did that back look so much like Su Qing? I rubbed my eyes and felt that I was probably dazzled, but I still couldn't help but want to go and take a look. I spoke to the children, then walked along the path to the other side of the river and slowly approached the figure. When I got closer, I saw her face clearly. Although I was a little thinner than in my memory and my temperament was more calm, my eyes and smile were still so familiar. I stood there in a daze, shouting involuntarily, "Su Qing?" She turned over and saw me. She was stunned at first, then her eyes slowly slid, and she smiled and said, "Yeah? Is it really you?" At that moment, I felt that time had stopped. My brain was blank, only my heart beat, dong dong dong, as if I was about to jump out. It took me a long time to find my voice and said in a daze, "Why are you here?" Su Qing smiled and said, "My family has been away from home for the past few years, and has only moved back here recently. I heard that there is a teaching activity, so I registered it to help me. I didn't expect to meet you." The language she spoke was still so gentle, like the small road on the river that year, as if it had never changed. I looked at her, and it seemed like there was something stuck in my throat. Thousands of words were stuck there, and I couldn't say a complete sentence. We stood by the river and started chatting. She told me that her family has had a lot of things over the years, her parents divorced and had economic problems. She and her mother have turned into several cities, and life has not been easy. But she didn't complain, just said lightly that these experiences made her learn independence and made her better understand what she wanted. As I heard it, my heart was sour that I felt that the gentle girl had carried so much behind her back. Later, I plucked up the courage to ask her, "Why did you leave suddenly at that time?" I didn't keep the words. She lowered her head and was silent for a while, and then said lightly, "Yang, I'm sorry, things at home were too awkward at that time, and I didn't even want to say goodbye to anyone. Later, I wanted to contact you, but I don't know where to start. I always feel that the longer the time, the less I don't have the face to look for you." I heard it, and the complaint in my heart disappeared in an instant, leaving only full of heartache. I shook my head and said, "It's okay, just go through the past. I'm very happy to see you now." She looked up at me, her eyes flashing, and smiled and said, "So, I really didn't expect that I would meet you again." That night, we talked for a long time, from the campus life that year to the point where we are now, and it seemed that we were back to the small road on the river. Before leaving, she took out a pen from her bag, wrote a number on the palm of my hand, and said, "Yang, this is my current phone number, don't let it go." I looked at the numbers on the palm of my hand, my heart was warm, and I kept talking, "Don't worry, I won't go back." After the teaching support activities ended, Su Qing and I began to contact each other continuously. Although we were still separated from each other, occasionally a message was released to talk about the recent situation, which made me feel that the gap in my heart was finally filled. Slowly, I realized that liking someone doesn't have to have it. Being able to watch her behave well, and occasionally saying a few words is also a kind of happiness. During the summer vacation of my junior year, I decided to go back to the small town. One was to see my father and mother, and the other was to go to those familiar places again. On the first day I returned to the small town, I headed straight to the small road by the river, standing under the crooked tree, my brain full of pictures of that year. At this moment, the phone was hit, and it was Su Qing's message, "Yang, have you heard you are back? Let's go to the river together when you have time." I looked at the news and my heart was beating wildly. I replied, "Okay, I'm right by the river, waiting for you." Not long after, I saw Su Qing walking past the intersection, wearing a simple white dress. Her hair was casually tilted into a horse's tail, and she smiled and shook her hand at me. At that moment, I suddenly felt that time seemed to have never gone far, and we were still the two young high school students that year, standing by the river, chatting and looking at Xiang. We walked slowly along the river road, talking about the changes over the years and the regrets of that year. She suddenly stopped and looked at me and said, "Yes, at that time, I knew you had a good impression of me, but I was in a group and couldn't give you any response. Thinking about it later, I'm sorry for you." I heard it, and my heart warmed up and said, "It's my business to like you, what's the matter with you? I'm pretty good now. It's better to see you again than anything else." She looked at me, her eyes flashed with a light, and she smiled and said, "Thank you, it's really, really." I slapped my head, a little embarrassed, and said, "Don't thank you for coming here. Are we not friends? Let's go, there is an old shop in front of me, and the ice noodles sold are quite delicious. Please have a bowl of them." She ordered the head and followed me with a smile. Xiang pulled our shadow very long, as if it was the same that year. That day, we sat at the door of the old shop, eating ice noodles and staring at the riverside. The wind blows over, bringing a little moisture, and it is still so comfortable. I suddenly felt that although I couldn't go back to youth, some people and some things would always stay in my heart, like the sunset on the river, which would always be so beautiful. Later, my relationship with Su Qing became more and more frequent. Although we no longer mention the love we had back then, the tacit understanding between us has never changed. After graduating from college, I stayed in another place to work, so she chose to go back to the small town to help take care of her home. We occasionally meet. Sometimes she comes to me, and sometimes I go back. Every time we meet, we are like an old friend, and we can't finish talking. Once, I went back to the small town for the new year and asked her to go to school for a walk. It was a sunny day, and the campus was quiet and quiet. The old banyan tree was still so swaying. The benches on the side of the playground were also carved with traces of the students who were painting that year. We stood under the teaching building and looked far away at the classroom that year. Su Qing suddenly said, "Yan, do you still remember the day of the cultural festival? Let's issue a promotional bill together," and we were so tired that we were sweating promising. I smiled and said, "Why don't you remember that I still called the cultural disaster that day, and I was laughed at by you for a long time?" She also smiled, her eyes turned crescent and said, "Yes, you were clumsy at that time, but very cute." I heard it, and felt warm in my heart, and couldn't help but say, "You were very cute at that time, and you looked particularly beautiful when you smile." She was stunned for a moment, her face turned slightly red, and then lowered her head and smiled, not saying anything more. We stood here in the campus, the sun shining warmly on our bodies, and time seemed to have returned to that green autumn. I suddenly realized that the most beautiful thing about youth is not what I have had, but I have loved and cherished it hard. Those unspoken words and those unfinished agreements, although they cannot be realized, are already the most precious things to stay in memory. When I left school that day, I took out the blue notebook from my bag, turned on the first page, and pointed to the words I wrote that year and showed them to Su Qing. "Look, this was what I wrote at that time." Today I found Baozan with Su Qing, which was really happy. She looked at the lines of words, her eyes were bright, and she said, "Yang, are you still keeping them?" I pointed and said, "Of course, this is my youth, how can I lose it?" She smiled, without saying a word, just leaned gently on the bench and stared at the banyan tree far away. I sat next to her, my heart calmed like the sunshine of this winter, and felt that no matter what the future would be, now at this moment, it was enough. The days continue, and the story between me and Su Qing is like this small river, flowing quietly, carrying memories, and warmth, flowing to the unknown farther.